I really hate to be the one to tell you this, but that guy, your neighbor?
Jerry.
Yeah, he's a vampire.
That is a terrible vampire name, Jerry.
The vampire is without a doubt one of the most recognizable monsters in pop culture. Countless interpretations have been made. They've been seen in horror, comedy, romance, action, and have remained ingrained in our minds for years. Today, we're going to talk about my favorite vampire movie. As part of the silent era, Nosferatu is one of the most influential horror movies of the genre. The quiet atmosphere and the lack of dialogue really help to sell the creepiness of what's unfolding. Without any dialogue, we can only imagine what the characters sound like. It gets our imagination going. We only have what's in front of us to go on. It makes us create. However, despite all this, Nosferatu didn't have an easy time when it was made. Due to the studio being unable to obtain rights to Bram Stoker's Dracula, they opted for making their own character. In the end, the two vampires would become different beings, as Dracula would become known for his cunning, gentlemanly charm, whilst Count Orlok would come to embody the much more demonic, diseased side of vampire lore. The slight differences made to the story do give this film an identity of its own, but Stoker's widow still sued for copyright infringement and demanded all copies of the film be destroyed. However, copies in other countries survived, and the film has earned its place in the horror genre. In contrast to Dracula, Orlok does not create other vampires, but kills his victims. Another difference is the look. When you look at Orlok, there's just something unsettling about him. You aren't attracted to him in a romantic way, but in an odd, strange, alluring kind of way. The rat-like features and the unnatural way he walks draws our attention, and are reminiscent of both the vampires depicted in folklore and a reflection of the German plague, preying on real-world fears in addition to fantastical ones. Whereas the novel for Dracula and the 1931 Universal film adaptation feels more like a gothic romance with horror elements, Nosferatu is a straight-up horror film. Whether you're watching him come into a frame or ascend a staircase, Orlok is scary, in a completely different way from Dracula. But how can this be if it's an adaptation? Whilst logistically it is, I see Nosferatu more as an inspiration than a straight-up adaptation. If the rights had been secured, the director may have told a faithful adaptation, but when faced with an obstacle, he was inspired to tell his own tale. But here's where things really get interesting. In an article by Jonathan Bailey on Plagiarism Today, it goes on to explain that the court orders resulted in prints being destroyed, but through time, one print found its way to the United States. Since Dracula was already in the public domain there was no way to have a US court order its destruction. Let me ask you this. How do you kill a vampire? If sunlight crossed your mind, here's why. In Nosferatu, Count Orlok is burned up by the sunlight. However, in Bram Stoker's version, sunlight only weakened vampires. The article later goes on to explain that the idea of vampires being killed by sunlight has been used over and over again in various movies, including many carrying the Dracula name. The theme has become so common that in 1992's adaptation of Dracula, praised for being loyal to the original novel, a narrator has to explain why he can walk in the daylight for a crucial scene. Not only was Nosferatu created out of inspiration, but also inspired others to come. I think what we can take away from this is that inspiration can come to us in all kinds of ways. Whether we see something on the street that sparks our imagination, or get inspired by a work we experience, these things give us the power to create. The subtle differences in character and the execution are what sets these stories apart. Rather than the charming, seductive vampire, we get one with a real thirst for blood, and one that has haunted nightmares for years to come. Rather than the handsome mask of a man hiding a frightening interior, we get an odd, otherworldly looking monster reminiscent of traditional vampire lore. However, we have only scratched the surface. We don't really get to know Orlok as much as we do with Count Dracula. All that's taken away from it is, he's a bloodthirsty killer who brings death and decay wherever he goes. Currently, the director of The Witch, Robert Eggers, plans to remake Nosferatu, having been inspired by the film in his own career, and this gives us a chance to delve deeper into Orlok's mythology. And with the resurgence in horror, Orlok could get a story that sets him apart completely from Dracula, but still pays homage to what the original inspired. That's what makes this movie so special. Nosferatu was an inspiration that led to its own unique creation, and many more to follow. What's your favorite scary movie? It's really hot under that thing. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching and happy Halloween. I went through a lot of potential titles for my horror video essay and I couldn't resist doing one on Nosferatu, which brings me on to this. This movie was introduced to me through a very good friend of mine, Morgan Robinson, who runs the Horror House podcast and the Purple Dawn Enlightenment Hour right here on YouTube and over on iTunes, so please go and check him out. Just last week I was on his channel talking about my book Moonflower and all about being a writer and what inspired me and how movies like this can really inspire others. Also, I want to give a shout out to Ross Bugden, who composed the music I used in this video. Go and give him a subscribe too, and if you want to see more of me, I'm currently co-hosting a Doctor Who recap show called Spacetime Rewind over on Oddshaped Channel, and all those links are in the description. A lot of things are changing for this channel soon with the amount of traffic I've gotten, and I want to keep making video essays like this, but I also want this to be a channel to help out potential writers, so if there's any suggestions or topics that you'd like me to tackle, please leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.